Hi, I am Allie Camilletti, and you are listening to Snack Leadership. I will be talking about everything leadership, broken down into bite-sized pieces. You will hear what different leadership skills look like in organizations and how they can rise teams up or take them down. I help leaders build resilience and improve performance by bringing awareness to opportunity behaviors in my business. Spark your mindset. I provide leadership and sales coaching, as well as team building and guest speaking. My hope is for you to feel inspiration and to create a spark in your mindset. Hi everyone. Today we are talking about behavioral change. Behavioral change refers to the process of modifying an individual's actions, attitudes, and habits to improve their performance, productivity, and overall well-being in the workplace. Todd Holzman has dedicated his life to empowering the difference makers. As the founder of Holzman Leadership, Todd's real work process is used by CEOs, senior leaders, and HR executives at numerous Fortune 500, FTSE 100, and Global 2000 companies to transform their leaders, cultures, and business results. He has taught leadership at Harvard, Kennedy School of Government, and Columbia University. Todd, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your knowledge.
Happy to be here. Thank you very much. That was a nice introduction, almost as if we had written it. So that's even better. So thank you for doing
It's
that for
funny
me.
how that works.
But you say it so authentically. I can see why you're a great coach. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I like to start off so that we can really understand who you are
Okay.
as a human.
Okay.
What is something that you've learned about yourself recently?
Can I give you the number of my therapist? What have I learned about myself? I guess I'm not sure if it's new, but um, as many people as I've developed, it's like well over 30,000 people now. Um, as long as I've been in the field, which has been just 30 years now. Um, I'm not. Uh, I can make some of those same mistakes that my clients make. You know, um,
Totally.
I'm a pretty. Now there are things that I can. There are mistakes I don't make anymore under certain conditions that I've kind of moved beyond. But you put me in new conditions where there's a lot of pressure, things are really complex, and some of the old behaviors they can come out again. It's kind of like I think this is true maybe for all the leaders that listen to your podcast. Like as good as you're going to get, you're never done. The closer you get to the horizon, the further it moves away. And all of your old failings and foibles are all still in you somewhere. And I think it's just important to recognize that we're all vulnerable in those ways, no matter how good we get, and to give ourselves some grace around those things.
Absolutely. So true. There's so many examples I can think of as you talk about that. And often I will share those. I'll be like, so I learned something that I'm not sure I knew, or I relearned it today. And I'll
Hmm.
share those with my people, and they're like, yeah, right?
Hmm.
Because you're speaking to level 5 leadership, Jim Collins. We're
Yeah.
always learning. We've never mastered it.
Hmm.
And that's what really makes good leadership.
Yeah, and I was talking 2 conversations ago before our talking to with each other to a CHRO at a hedge fund, and he was very upset about something that happened over the last couple of days or so. With and I was listening and I was thinking, I still get very upset about things. Upset, still have the ability to be offended, I think, as well. Less that, but just maybe more upset. And I think also the thing that I've learned is on the one hand, not to take myself so seriously, but on the other hand, to not say that the emotions aren't worth paying attention to. Um,
Yes.
because yes, I might be overreacting, but there also might be something that I am valid that I am reacting to that's really important, you know, that does in fact need to be addressed and that do need to express myself around. I think the things that, and what I was saying to him is that the things that bother us, I think bother us for a reason. Now, maybe we need to learn something about ourselves. Maybe we need to grow up. That's for sure a possibility. And we need to get over it, whatever it is. But I also think sometimes they bother us because we're the persons who most need to address whatever that issue or situation is. And it's given to us as a, okay, this is your thing. And that therefore is our biggest challenge, because we need to get beyond the counterproductive ways of behaving our being so upset will drive us toward. So, anyways, that was probably a longer answer than you wanted to. What have you learned lately?
No, what comes up for me as you talk about that is just that when we do react to those, and that is our level of learning, right? It's for us to look at ourselves at that point and assess what have I not really dug into that is showing itself,
Right.
right? And it's that self-awareness.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I'm going to ask you, we're talking about behavioral change.
Yes.
When do you remember your first real experience of embracing behavioral change for yourself?
Um, yeah. So, and kind of what we're known for amongst all these kind of corporates that hire us to do leadership development is around programs that actually change behavior and coaching that actually
Yep.
changes behavior. Because I will, I'm gonna um, ease into the answer to your question. Um, because if you look at the field of leadership learning development, the return on investments generally abysmal. Um, Across these companies globally, $60 billion every year is spent on leadership development, about $360 billion spent on learning and corporate learning and development. Um, and anything that where any kind of coaching or development that the object is to change how people behave with one another, we are not seeing that change happen. And therefore, if people aren't changing, then they're not going to be using what they learned to solve real business problems, to get the performance of their people and their teams better. And therefore, we're not going to see an ROI, right? So, what I've been obsessed with for the last 30 years is trying to do something about that. And it started with my own experience of not being able to change my own behavior, but I didn't realize that's what it was. So I started a small business coming out of undergrad. And I'm sorry, I started and ran a small business for two semi absentee owners. And for what it was successful. Uh, First year and a half, we had 150 members. There was no turnover except for one person in an industry that is known for 30% turnover, yada, yada, yada. So I was very proud of it, and I love doing it. And then I wanted to innovate. It's like, this could be even better. Let's expand all of it. And I considered myself to be, at that time, the ripe old age of 23, 22, a communications expert. And I had some reason to think that about myself, even though I was quite full of myself, because I'd been through, like, at an early age, a lot of like communications training, leadership training, negotiation training, influence, interpersonal skills, yada yada yada. But despite all of that, I was unable to convince them to do anything new, and it was extremely frustrating for me. And Ali, it wasn't my behavior that was the problem; it was their behavior. So I went back to grad school, went to Columbia, did my master's in social organizational psychology. And in one of the classes, um, they brought in these consultants to kind of guest teach the class for the day. And they put us through an exercise that taught me something about a lot about my own behavior and behavior change. And the exercise was we had to read about this character, Bert, botching a performance feedback conversation with someone on his team named Ruthie. And he did a horrible job of it. And the consultant said, okay, well, what are your critiques of how he did it? Wrote it on a flip chart. The next flip chart, they said, so how should one behave instead of the ways that he behaved in? Wrote that on a flip chart. And we said all kinds of wonderful things like he should be honest, he should be open, he should be curious, he should listen. It should be a collaborative exchange, not a one-way conversation. All these great motherhood and apple pie kinds of things. They said, okay, great rules, solid critiques. We're going to bring Bert in the room, have a conversation with him about his poor conversation with Ruthie. And, you know, I watched my fellow classmates have a go, and they were horrible. I'm looking at them. I'm like, I have never seen a more pathetic display in my life. So I waited to go last, like, let me show you how it's done. And I have a go at Bert, and I am so bad that my fellow classmates pushed their chairs right to the table. You can hear the screeching of the chairs on the floor because I just got into an argument with the guy because he was being so unreasonable and closed-minded and stubborn and hypocritical and all of it, right? And then the consultants debriefed the exercise and they asked us, so what happened? And we all blamed Bert for our inability to have an influential behavior changing conversation on him. But then what we realized is, wait a second, we hardly gave him any of the feedback that we said he needed to hear. And we violated all of our own behavioral rules in our conversation with him. So we're behaving in many of the ways that we were critiquing him of. So not only were we ineffective, we're also hypocrites. Wonderful. So then it raises a question, why do we behave in ways that were so ineffective and hypocritical? Because clearly that's not what we intended, but we did something different. So why did when I espoused saying it's really important to listen, why did I try to, unsuccessfully, dominate the conversation? Why is that contradiction? And this is where I learned about really what holds us back from behaving, leading and behaving in the ways that we believe are appropriate and virtuous with other people. And this is the work of Chris Argyris. He was this amazing Harvard Business School professor. He taught at 4 different graduate schools at Harvard, which is unheard of, wrote several hundred articles, 30 books, and received 14 honorary doctorates for his massive contributions to multiple fields. And what he discovered through his research, and we've since revalidated that research through our work with probably nearly 50,000 people, is that when we're under real life pressure, we may espouse to want to be honest and open and curious and compassionate, but we unconsciously default to being controlling, competitive, and trying to keep things too comfortable, and then condemning people for when they don't act and think in the ways we think they ought to.
Do you think it's always those key pieces that we revert back to, or I usually say we revert back to old behaviors?
But the question is, what's the old behaviors? I don't think it's actually
Right.
much of a reversion. But so what we see from the research, at least, is we have a profoundly overprotective impulse. We overprotect
Mhm.
ourselves and other people whenever we're talking to each other about things that really matter, right? I mean, as a species, I'll come around to this reversion thing. As a species, I mean, any species, we want to pursue things we want, and we want to avoid bad things from happening. That's kind of, I guess, human nature 101. And if we didn't have that primitive instinct, then we wouldn't be here to talk about how we have these primitive instincts, which to some degree have outlived their usefulness. And so whenever we're in a conversation with each other about something important, right? Whenever one of the leaders that are listening to this podcast in the vacation rental space are trying to talk to somebody in their team, they're trying to pursue something good and they're trying to prevent something bad from happening. And all that is good, right? But it also can mess with us because maybe, okay, you're trying to improve the performance of the person who is in charge of delivering clean linens to a rental property, maybe, right? And maybe you think, for whatever reason, they're not doing the level of job you needed them to do. Okay. But of course, you're going to be worried about, so the goal is get them to do a better job. But the thing you're trying to avoid is of them being so upset that they're demoralized and they do even a worse job than they were doing before. So then you have the conversation, maybe a tiptoe in it, you water it down, they never get the message. At least they weren't upset, but their performance doesn't improve. And so what you see is that the oversimplification of this overprotective program, which Arders discovered, um, and that I branded as the overprotective program. It's largely we're either trying to be too controlling or trying to keep things too comfortable or some very entertaining passive aggressive combination between the two, like asking leading questions. Do you really think that's the best way to deliver the linens, whatever it might be? I know and you know that I think it isn't, but I'm going to ask you a question so I can create the illusion that you're discovering it for yourself. So this reverting to old behaviors, I think that does happen, but more often than not, when people go through lots of training, they're not reverting because they're never changed in the first place.
Uh,
This is a term that our field uses, right? They're just
yeah.
reverting. I'm like, I never saw evidence during the coaching sessions or the leadership training that they could produce a new behavior. So how can I say they're reverting? They may know more, right? But knowing something and being able to behave according to it are two different things. And this is important to know. The coaching work that you do, the coaching work my team and I do, I think are important because just because you know something doesn't mean you can behave according to it. So a lot of the
Right.
things that we might coach people on, they could read about in like a good book or they could watch a YouTube video. But and yes, knowing what to do is vital, but what really matters is your ability to produce it under real life pressure. And that's where good coaching comes in to help people bridge the knowing doing gap. And it's very important for people, I think, to realize, particularly leaders of people, to realize that um, to not be too hard on yourself when you can't lead in the ways that you would like to, according to role models in your life or books that you've read or YouTube people that you follow. It's awfully hard. And that's why good coaching, I think, is so important to help bridge that gap.
I'm going to go off our regular questions and I'm going to ask you something that I'm seeing as an industry
Mm,
trend
mm,
with leaders.
good.
And maybe you are seeing this as well
Mm-hmm,
in other companies.
mm-hmm.
But what I am finding is that they are struggling making certain decisions. And we're just going to use the example of budgeting right now
Okay.
because of what the industry experienced in vacation rentals.
Mm-hmm.
So in vacation rentals, what happened, right? COVID happened. There was all this fear of loss of income. Like some places got completely shut down with vacation
I
rentals.
understand. Horrible.
And right. But then 2022 was the biggest year they'd had. Like everybody's like, get me the heck out of my house. I'm going to be working remote.
Mm-hmm.
And it just went gangbusters.
Mm-hmm.
And so now, then it dwindled off a little bit. And now we're seeing a little bit of a dip again.
Mm-hmm.
And they're really struggling making decisions because they don't feel confident anymore. They can't look at year over year and be like, well, this is what we trended before. Like it is kind of messing with their psyche.
Yeah.
If you were to coach them in this area, what would you say?
Hmm. I'm often coaching people on So this is my way of stalling and answering your question because I'm waiting for my brain to spool up. But I'm often coaching people on and we training people on how to um, how to have very effective conversations about things that really matter to them in and outside of work. And of course, that is with your team, that's with your customers, your clients, other people that you depend upon that don't actually work for you, because I imagine your industry, there's a lot of third parties that you need to get good
Yeah.
work from, and they're not always necessarily the most collaborative or as responsive as you need them to be, all of that, right? But what you're talking about is a situation where it's very hard to predict what's going to happen next because there aren't clear analogs in the past that you can draw from. Like, oh, this is going to be like this time, or this is going to be like this time. So I don't actually know how to answer the question because they're facing, but I might say something good. We'll see. They're facing what is a non-routine challenge, right? They haven't
Yeah.
been here before. And
It's uncertainty.
there's no they can't look to their prior experience for answers or at least full answers. And there seems to be no expert that they could turn to in the world that can tell them what's going to happen, right? That's what I think you're talking about. So it's a major adaptive challenge for people. I mean, you know, I think so. Then, what does a person do in that situation when the leader, you feel, I mean, this is your livelihood, and you feel a lot of pressure to know, and and a lot of people may be depending upon you as well. Because if you guess wrong, you may have to fire these people in a year from now,
Well, and this is control. This is perfectionism, right? There's probably even some pleaser in there that comes up
for
from
sure.
them, which are all the main saboteurs that I see with the people that I work with.
And it makes it
So
harder
it's
to think
relaxing
to
those.
think through situations that are ambiguous and complex, right? So I guess the thing is, maybe they have to first of all get off being the person who knows, and maybe not. And by the way, that's not the same thing as saying letting themselves off the hook for being the person who has to figure it out. There's a difference between knowing and figuring something out. So maybe the first thing that people need to know to do, leaders, is to share the dilemma that they're facing with other people and a coach for sure. But I'm like their team. It's like here's and maybe they'll think it'll make them look bad, right? Or maybe they'll think maybe some people will start looking for the exits because my big bad leader doesn't know, can't foresee the future, and people do have a lot of expectations of leaders to have answers. But
Yeah.
there's also a kind of respect that you can gain for your people is saying, if you can portray the confidence of, listen, we're facing a very unique situation that we in our industry we haven't faced in the past. And it's not unique to us. And it's hard to figure out uh, our budgeting, where we should spend our money, where should we expand, should we contract, all of it. And I'm confident together we can get through this. Um, but I want to share with you some of the things that I'm struggling with because I don't know the answer. And I think people who do the work day in, day out, you might have some perspective. So bring them into the challenge because more brains is always better.
Yeah.
Even if sometimes as a leader, all you're going to hear is bad thinking and bad ideas. At least it'll activate something in your brain because you'll be like, not that, maybe this. And then maybe unbidden, some voice will emerge in your head, which will manifest itself as something like an answer. But you have to expose yourself of being the person I think that doesn't know, and maybe that's a route to figuring it out. That's the
I
best I
like it.
got right now, I think. But also, there's also research, right? I mean, there's all kinds of research that's done on this industry. So it's like, don't be lazy about that either. Like, get into it, read as much as you can, educate yourself, because sometimes when you're a leader of a business, you're so busy, you kind of narrow your field of vision. You're so focused on your customer
Yes.
base and what you do day in, day out. You can't afford that now. Mm-mm. No.
Yeah.
And then sometimes maybe you need to be even more creative, like look at other similar, not the same industries, similar industries that have gone through these periods. What are they doing? Because you just start thinking more innovatively about the situation. So sometimes you need to like step out of your industry a little bit, go to something that's kind of adjacent to it. And if they have been through similar uncertainty cycles, what have they done with it? So anything you could do to get your outside of your own brain, research, look at other industries, and expose the dilemma that you're facing with other people in your team.
I
I
love it.
will say, if you
Okay.
don't do that, you're going to really struggle. There's no guarantee if you do that, you're
Yeah,
going to find an answer to be successful. But I can guarantee if you don't do that, you'll fail, or the probability is much higher.
totally.
I don't know what you think about that as an answer, but that's the best I could come up with.
No, I think there was a lot of great nuggets in there
Okay.
that people can pull from. So, talk to us about a mentor that you've had in your life.
Ah, that there was a continuation of that sentence. Yeah, I had a mentor um, who was really instrumental in opening my eyes um, about a kind of bigger way of living. Um, had a very valuable hand in developing me, um, and uh, also at a certain point who became an exploiter. And
Wow.
and so the lesson I learned from that is, you know, absent some of the relationships that will endure for a lifetime, like the love of your life, your family. Um, there are others relationships where sometimes we're there for each other at a certain part of the journey, and
Yes.
sometimes you have to realize when it's time to let go, and and sometimes you hold on too long because you're scared to step out on your own, which was me for a while. And so at the end of the day, I'm still grateful for all of it, you know. But
Yeah.
not
Makes
all.
me think of
Not,
the quote of people come into your life for a reason or a season
that's
sometimes.
nice. Yeah, yeah. And I think you got to know the season, and not try
Yeah.
to overextend the summer. Which well past Labor Day. I'm
Totally.
still Labor Day, is it? Yeah, I'm still wearing linen. You're not really supposed to. It's October. Come on. So I wore linen too long, I think, and it's um and had I been more uh, open with people around me who cared about me, I probably could have pulled myself out of it sooner. So there's a number of lessons that definitely come from that. But I just like for your listeners, and they probably experience this too. Sometimes we hold on to relationships long past their expiration date, and sometimes we don't
Absolutely.
invest enough in relationships either. It cuts both ways. But understanding relationships, I think, is and the role they play in your life and the role that you play for other people, I think, is just a vital part of human living,
Yeah.
and not
So
very
as
well
we wrap it
understood.
up,
Yeah, yeah.
a quote that you feel embodies this skill set of behavioral change. It can be by somebody else, it can be by you.
Um, uh, Carl Jung, um, who next to Freud is like the founder of everything of modern day psychiatry and modern day psychology. Um, I'm not sure if this is original to him, but it's from the Latin, which translates into uh, what you most need to learn lies in the places where you least want to look.
Yeah.
So I will say to your listeners, you've got a team of people, right, who work for you. You got a extended team of people that you who don't work for you but need to do work for you. um, and I bet you there are things that bother you about them, their behavior, their performance, all
Mm-hmm.
of it. And that probably immediately puts you in a dilemma. Um, because if you don't address it, it's going to keep plaguing you and nothing's going to improve. And if you do address it, there's a chance it could get worse.
Yep.
Um, and sometimes you just want to avoid it, right?
Of
And
course.
and sat
That's the easy way out.
and make do and create workarounds and take more of the work on your shoulders, maybe. Not that you're not already extremely busy, and you accept things being less good than they should be in the name of maintaining whatever you're trying to maintain. Um, and I would say to people that this thing is bothering you for a reason, and there are probably some good reasons. And you're probably, because it bothers you more than others, it's almost like you've been chosen to address it. And so now
Yeah.
the question is, are you going to step up and do it or not? And I think what I can promise is that if you could step up to these conversations with people around you about problems and opportunities to make things better, and if you do it with there's skill involved here, but we don't have the time to cover skill now. But if you do it with a true heart, and what I mean by that is not in a condemning way, not in a way to make people wrong, but if you do it, if you're truthful with them on behalf of making them and things better, if your intent is aligned that way, then what I can promise is that the best thing that could possibly happen will, through leaning into it, through the truth. And it may not feel like that immediately, but if you embrace this as an act of faith, I think you'll prove yourself right. And
Yep.
your credibility will go up. Some people won't improve, and that'll be important to know. And also, you will have you will gotten closer to reaching your full potential as a leader and as a human being. There's a reason
For
why we say the
sure.
truth shall set you free.
Yep.
And
Exactly.
so what I'm trying to encourage people around is have truthful conversations around things that matter, uh,
Yes.
and and act with some faith that it can make a difference. But this is also a skill. So what my team has put together are some resources for your listeners if they want some free resources that can help.
Great.
And we're posting on this stuff all the time. But if they were to email my PA, her name is Lace, and her name Lace at Holzman.com, HOLZMAN.com. Thankfully, I know how to spell my own last name. And if they put in the subject line the name of your podcast and it says "send me free stuff" or whatever they want to say, but indicate like "send me candor tools," whatever. We have a protocol now that they'll get those things automatically. Okay,
Thank you. And we'll put that in the show notes.
you're
Thank you
welcome.
so much, Todd. One more
Yeah,
question.
please.
What's your favorite snack?
Oh shoot, I don't eat many snacks anymore. My favorite snack, it doesn't consider me its favorite, but would have to be like pizza. Still, I think.
Pizza?
Yeah, and because I'm like depriving myself of pizza now, I watched this David Portney on YouTube Shorts. One bite, everybody knows the rules, and I watch him reviewing pizzas. I guess I'm sublimating my
Oh,
pizza desire by watching other people eat pizza. It's very sad, Alec. It's very sad, but
that's funny. Well, you are in New York, so I would expect pizza to be a snack for you.
I know you were expecting to hear like Cheetos or something, right? Okay, now I'm trying to live healthy. I have dark chocolate every night. There you go. There's my favorite snack. It's pretty lame.
Oh, Todd, I appreciate your knowledge, your time, and I'm so grateful for you. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you for having me, and I hope it was useful to your listeners.
Thank you for tuning in to Snack Leadership. I hope you felt inspiration, motivation, and felt your mindset spark. Snack Leadership is recorded and produced by myself, Ali Camilletti, and music by Shireen Amini.